My sister-in-law requested a house key. I refused. Then it vanished. When I went to her apartment to get it, I encountered something shocking. I recently married my boyfriend of 6 years. We are both 27. While COVID has set our careers back a little, we are figuring it out together. My husband is not particularly close to his family. He never said why he isn't close to them, but based on what I've gathered, my husband and sister-in-law have some issues. These concerns compelled the in-laws to choose sides. My spouse hasn't been close to them since they sided with my sister-in-law. To be honest, it didn't disturb me too much. However, because I come from a large family, my spouse was frequently invited to our family gatherings because we had been together so long. Following these incidents, I noticed my spouse becoming silent, melancholy, and dejected. When we tried to talk about it, he never truly opened up. He just told me he wishes he had a better family. I recognized that he desired a closer or better relationship with his family. However, I didn't want to do anything without his approval. When I volunteered to contact his family on his behalf, he said he didn't want to do anything yet. He kept saying that there would be a better moment, but I had no idea when that would be. At one time, I was certain it would happen at our wedding. However, we married in a small ceremony attended by only our closest friends and family. He had not invited anyone from his side. However, I did meet his parents and my sister-in-law. While our wedding ceremony was going on, his parents and sister attempted to enter the site, which my husband had clearly cautioned them against. When they were successful in entering the premises, they made a big deal out of it, casting my husband as the bad guy for never responding to messages, picking up calls, or visiting my mother-in-law when she was battling cancer. My husband firmly instructed them to leave, indicating they were not welcome. My sister-in-law stood in the corner, watching everything happen. When her eyes met mine, she offered me a little shrug, as if to say, "What else are we supposed to do?" Once they were booted out, the wedding went off without a hitch. Following that, we were content to get married despite the odds. When we were on our way to our honeymoon, I received a friend request notification on my phone. It came from my sister-in-law. It seemed odd, but I didn't mind because we were family. I added her, then forgot about it. When we returned from our honeymoon, my husband and I were joyfully settling into our new home and married life. That's when my sister-in-law returned to my life. She messaged me, stating she knew I came from a large family and understood the value of family, which she claimed my husband did not. She expressed her gratitude for my assistance in reuniting the family. She also discussed in detail how my husband could be a bit juvenile, but promised me that if we worked together, we would be able to fix everything quickly. I was naive and believed her. We began talking more or less regularly. She even came over to our house once or twice while my husband was away because she wanted to meet me. Because I worked from home and had health difficulties, I couldn't entirely avoid her. During one of these visits, my sister-in-law requested a copy of the keys to our house. This was an odd request. When I questioned why she wanted them, she stated she was concerned about me because I was at home all day working. She stated that if something occurred to me while my husband was gone, having a key would allow her to enter and assist me. Although I understood her argument in the context of a medical emergency, something about her request seemed odd. Her statements made me feel uneasy, but I couldn't understand why. I gently declined and promised her that if anything happened, I'd call my husband. However, my sister-in-law did not appear pleased with my refusal. She quickly ended the conversation and departed. Although she was smiling, it didn't reach her eyes, which worried me even more. Following the incident, I stopped inviting her over. Every time she wanted to visit, I would make excuses to keep her away from the house. But one day, my justifications were ineffective, and she came over anyhow. I was on high alert the entire time she was present. When she eventually departed after lingering for tea, I felt relieved, but not for long. A few days later, I couldn't find my house keys in the customary location. Panic ensued instantly. I decided to go to my sister-in-law's apartment to get them. In one of our early talks, she provided her address and invited me to tea. I couldn't go since I was ill, but I knew the spot. As soon as my husband arrived home, I jumped into my car and drove to her place. I knocked on the door, and a man answered. I inquired if I might talk with my sister-in-law. The man respectfully informed me that nobody by her name lived there. I stated that she had given me this address and even showed him her picture. He glanced at it and stated that my sister-in-law did not live there and that I must have entered the wrong address. This seemed really suspicious. I casually messaged her and asked for her address again. She replied with the same address as before. By this point, I was absolutely panicked. I arrived home, trying to act normal, but I could tell I was nervous. My husband realized right away that something was awry. He has been trying to ask me what is wrong and what has happened for the past 2 days, but I have no idea how to explain the issue to him. I don't want him to be disappointed in me, but I realize I should inform him. I kept wondering if it was my fault for initiating the entire conversation with my sister-in-law. If I hadn't done it, I would not have lost the keys in this manner. But I really wanted to help. I know I should inform my husband about the entire scenario. I read what you stated, and I agree that I was terribly stupid to keep things from him. I should have told him about it, anyhow. I understand why some of you are dubbing me the evil guy in this circumstance, and I also understand those who believe I am not fully to blame. Whatever happens, I'll do the right thing tonight and tell him everything. Do not fear, I will keep you updated. Regardless, I appreciate you being sincere and pointing out my mistakes. So the conversation went better than anticipated. When my husband arrived home from work, I told him I had something to discuss with him. He appeared relieved. When we were both comfortable, I told him everything. I described how his sister-in-law messaged me after our honeymoon, telling me that I could mend the family by remaining in touch with her and gradually reintroducing her and his parents into his life. I told him I didn't mean to hide anything or go against him, but I was afraid he'd stop me from doing anything. Since he was always refusing to tell me what was wrong with his family, I decided to try to heal the relationship myself. He listened to what I said without interrupting. When I was finished, my husband expressed his disappointment in me for keeping this from him for so long. He claimed I should have asked him what the problem was, and he would have told me everything now that we're married. He added that he didn't feel comfortable informing me before we got married since he didn't know when his family would try to turn my heart against him. When I told him I couldn't follow, he gave me all the facts. My father-in-law is a very egotistical and abusive man. He has always been like this, caring just about himself. My sister-in-law acquired this feature from him. She is a narcissistic yet charming lady who appears to be a very empathetic and sincere human being. However, in truth, she is selfish. My husband became aware of the hazardous atmosphere as soon as he matured enough to notice it. My mother-in-law and father-in-law both refused to divorce one another because they did not want to go through the inconvenience of court proceedings. When my sister-in-law's behavior got her into trouble at school, my mother-in-law exacerbated the situation by enabling her. Over time, my sister-in-law became more confrontational, harsh, and disrespectful. When she started college, she had a heated dispute with my mother-in-law and father-in-law. They were paying for her college tuition, but she was dissatisfied since they were also saving money for my husband's schooling rather than giving it all to her as pocket money. At first, my father-in-law and mother-in-law refused to give my sister-in-law any more money because she already had plenty. But then my sister-in-law pointed out that my husband could just work his way through university, as my father-in-law had done, especially since he was a guy. She said that she was far too fragile to perform such work alone. Following that, my husband's education fund began to diminish. He was not aware of this. All he knew was that there was money set aside for him. When it came time for admissions, he learned the truth. When my sister-in-law encouraged him to just work his way through college, my husband chose to avoid touch with them. He began going no contact when he moved out at 19, but the decision had become permanent by the time he was 23. Hearing all of this made me realize how silly I was to invite my sister-in-law into our home. My husband also said that his mother had repeatedly contacted him over the years to ask for money, despite the fact that my sister-in-law appeared to be wealthy. Later, he discovered from their relative that my sister-in-law was doing drugs. While she did not appear to have a drug problem, she had struggled with substance misuse for some time. That's when I realized what had happened with the lost keys. My spouse quickly instructed me to call a locksmith and have the locks changed as soon as possible. He was concerned about when or if my sister-in-law will try to enter our home. I immediately disabled my sister-in-law's contact information and social media sites, preventing her from contacting me. We had the locks replaced, and as I said in my previous report, I felt a lot better after that. As my job responsibilities changed, I had to return to the office to work on Wednesdays and Fridays. When I got home one Friday, I noticed that my spouse had already arrived. It turns out that our neighbor, a nice old lady, was outdoors in her garden when she observed a suspicious young woman attempting to enter our home. The woman's description was exactly like my sister-in-law. The neighbor phoned the cops, and they apprehended her. My husband has decided not to prosecute charges, but he will apply for a restraining order to safeguard our safety. Looking back, I understand how naive I was in trusting others so easily. While my objective was to aid my husband, I now realize that my actions were presumptuous. If you care so much about your husband's well-being, why don't you tell him everything rather than keeping things from him? I'm sure it would upset him more to find that you were keeping things from him than to learn that you were talking to his sister. ITA, in the wrong, but only for being arrogant. You are purposefully ignoring your husband's demands in order to accomplish your own, and you are keeping everything from him. He does not wish to communicate with his family. Why can't you respect that? Now, consider a different situation. In late October, my wife Karen, 78 years old, and I, 71 years old, leave for Florida and spend the summer in Connecticut. Our daughter Kara and her husband Sean live in Massachusetts. Kara is pregnant with their first child, who is due in March. In September, my stepson gave Kara and Sean new kitchen floors. I offered to help with the installation. Their home is nearly a century old. While I am not a contractor or carpenter, I am proficient in home repairs. I was simply intended to lay the floors, but during the demolition, I persuaded them to remove several cabinets so that the flooring could be installed properly. I agreed to help with prep work on weekends and returned from Florida in November to build and install the new cabinets. They agreed. Kara and Sean, as new homeowners, are not particularly handy, but they were eager to get started. However, as we started, we discovered that the walls were covered with decomposing horsehair plaster, which was an unpleasant surprise. By the conclusion of the weekend, there was no stove hookup, only 10% of the floors had been put, and the kitchen was disorganized. I told them to plaster the walls throughout the week, and I'd return the next weekend. Kara and Sean contacted in a panic on Tuesday, claiming the plaster was a catastrophe. Kara expressed worried about the burden of her pregnancy. I told them to wait. Kara, on the other hand, told me she felt misled, that the project had spiraled out of control, and that she wanted me to accept responsibility, not monetarily, but for my role in the issues. I informed them that they had taken the decision to demo the cabinets, and that it was not my home. They eventually compensated me for my services and hired a contractor. They stated I couldn't commit to a project of this scale, especially given I work full-time and assist my stepson with his house flip. They questioned whether I would return to assist after departing for Florida, and Kara was uneasy working during her pregnancy. I disagreed with their evaluation yet was devastated when they fired me. Since then, things have gotten odd. I haven't contacted them to inquire about the kitchen or the baby, despite receiving occasional updates. Karen has asked about the baby several times. Kara recently contacted us, stating that the situation has been dreadful. They had to obtain licenses from the town, and they have not had a stove or sink in months. Kara claims I don't care about her health or our grandchild since I haven't checked in and haven't taken charge of the situation. I chuckled and told her I would have finished it by now. She texted Karen and myself, instructing us not to speak to her and expressing her displeasure. Karen then said no to Kara's baby shower in January and cancelled our visit without alerting them. Sean contacted us, urging us to reconsider, stating that they will only become first-time parents once. He added that Kara is 6.5 months pregnant and did not mean what she said. He even offered to pay for our visit tickets. Karen and I, on the other hand, have maintained our solid attitude. We advised them to notify us well in advance and that we may visit in March, either before or after the baby is delivered. Kara is devastated, but Karen and I were just trying to satisfy her requests. Now I wonder whether I am the YTA on so many ways. First, as you mentioned, you are neither a contractor or carpenter but are skilled at house maintenance. You urged them to demolish their kitchen but barely completed 10% of the flooring before leaving. Kara has every right to be upset and her feelings are valid. You made a mess of their place and then backed down, essentially saying, "Oh well, not my issue." I personally would not want anything to do with you, but they have invited you to their baby shower. Go and apologize. Now, consider a different situation. I have 3 children. My husband and I worked hard to raise them and help them become successful adults, and they have. I am proud of all 3. They were wonderful children who have grown into decent individuals, if I do say so myself. When my oldest daughter married a widower with a 2-year-old child, my husband and I established an education fund for that child, as we had for all of our biological grandchildren. We understand a little bit about investing in compound interest, and by starting early, we can invest a small sum every month. By the time they graduate from high school, we can present them with enough money to get them started in life. My oldest grandchild recently graduated from high school. After accounting for scholarships and other expenses, we were able to inform them that they would graduate debt-free. We do not give them money directly. Rather, we pay for tuition, fees, and other expenditures. We acquired this lesson from our youngest child, our only son. We gave him the money directly, just as we had done with his 2 elder sisters. He got scholarships as well, but he spent the money we gave him and eventually decided to become a tradesperson instead. He is doing well now and has a great business. My son was married before, but it did not work out. He has 2 children from that marriage. Last year, he married a lovely woman who had a 15-year-old kid. She had her son quite early, which caused a schism in her family, and none of them attended the wedding. My son approached us about donating to his stepson's education. After some deliberation, my husband and I decided that we could afford to donate $5,000 to help, but that was it. My son was quite disappointed. He understands that all of our other grandchildren have enough money in their accounts to cover at least 2.5 years of in-state tuition and costs. While my son makes a fair living, he also enjoys spending it on toys and holidays. I don't believe he or my daughter-in-law had saved anything for his stepson's school, which is why we contributed $5,000. That money came from my personal fund to replace my car. My son and his wife are planning ahead for the stepson's graduation in June, but they continue to complain that I treat him differently than my other grandchildren. I understand we're treating him differently, but we didn't have nearly 2 decades to save for him. When I clarified this issue, I may not have worded it correctly. My son's lack of finances to pay for his stepson's schooling is due to his spending habits before marriage. I hope this is apparent now. I spoke with my husband and children about it. My son wants me to transfer money from all of the accounts we've set up for his biological children and open a new one for his stepson. We answered by offering to split the 2 accounts we already had for his biological children into 3, including the $5,000. We also agreed to continue contributing to these accounts until they are depleted. My youngster appears dissatisfied with that option. However, we did not have the same 15-year head start on saving for this grandson as we did for the previous ones. He can be disappointed that his stepson will not have the same head start, but he cannot be angry with us for not being able to offer more right now. Finally, it is up to him to provide for his family. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.